Okay, it being 5:30 and we have a quorum, we will bring to order the select board meeting of February 10th, 2025. Um, and we'll get down to business. I was going to start with you anyway, Tricia. Um, but let's just take the minutes. You made some minor wording changes on one of them, and we've seen those. Um, I've reviewed that and have no problem, and gladly take a motion to approve the minutes as updated.
Okay, I will move to accept the updated meeting minutes from the meeting of January 27th.
And I will second that. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll put the matter to a vote. Tricia?
Aye.
And on the motion passes 2-0. Liaison reports are next, and I will begin. I sent my written liaison report around, covering Police Department, Police Services Advisory Committee, the Mohawk Trail Regional School District Personnel Negotiation Subcommittee, Pioneer Valley Veteran Services, and the Franklin Regional Transportation Authority Advisory Board. Any questions on what I had sent around, Tricia?
No, I don't have any, Rick. Thank you.
Yeah. You also sent your liaison reports covering Town Hall, Council on Aging, uh, Emergency Management Director, MVP. I have read them. I didn't have any questions. You did wonder if perhaps the select board needed to review one of the items, but that's not before us as yet anyway, correct?
It will be soon. I just want to know because it's a project, so to get it into the timeline in the appropriate place, if it's going to need select board approval, I want to make sure there's enough time for that.
So we are wondering if it does need that.
Yeah, for to send out a letter, just to send out a letter of support request to the different partners. So one of the partners is FERCog, but then we've got several community organizations, the school district, and others that will be soliciting a letter of support for our grant application for the MVP project. And so, do I have to get select board approval for that draft letter before I send it out? Or can I
I
just send it out asking them for a letter of support?
I would defer to Terry.
So you're just sending a letter asking for a letter of support?
Hmm.
Yeah, I can't imagine that you would need board approval to do that.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
You're
That's
aware.
good to know.
I would agree, so feel free to do so when you have it ready.
Okay, thank you.
Was there anything else you wanted to say about anything on your liaison report?
No, the only thing was a slight clarification about with the EMD and Shelburne controls.
Yes.
We were just trying to get that. I don't know where that sound's coming from. Is that feedback from me?
It's coming through as though it were you.
Hmm. I'll try again. Okay, so um, that was just kind of a follow-up on part of the tabletop exercise that when the MEMA folks had said it would be a good idea for the, if you recall, to have the non-emergency numbers switched over to the EOC in the case of an emergency so that they can handle those. That was just to finalize the plan with them and how that was going to work. And he hasn't heard back from them on that. He was trying to get a meeting, so I misunderstood the way it was written in the agenda.
I
Okay.
see, I believe Andrew is here. I see a white screen and his name, Andrew.
Yes, I'm here. My camera is very slow to warm up. There it is.
Welcome aboard. We are Actually, we had just got to the third and final liaison reports, which was yours. You did send us the overview on the COG meeting that you were. You gave us a good list of MVP grant, DOT items, overview on that. Tricia, did you have any questions on that portion of his?
No,
And neither
thank you.
And Andrew, I think you were also going to do one live tonight for Highway.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Actually, Jeff was out today, so didn't get it, and I was running around, so I didn't get a chance to catch up with him. So I will do that next time. The only thing from the FERCog that may warrant further discussion there, well, there may be other things, but well, two things. One is the 3.5% sort of brings us back to the question of our, how much we want to add to the budget in the coming year. And the other being the charter changes that will be on the warrant this spring and which will take up a lot of paper. So it will raise the question of whether we want to do a pre-meeting or not.
Absolutely, I think.
I would agree.
Andrew, when you say charter changes, are you talking about the planning board's proposed changes?
No, I'm talking about the FERCog's
Oh.
changes to its own charter,
Okay,
which it's bringing out to all of its member towns.
okay.
So you said it needs a 2/3 vote in each town.
Right.
Does it need unanimous positive vote from all towns?
No, 2/3 of the towns have to pass it each by a 2/3 majority.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. You're
Yeah.
giant. I lost a separate line there. Sorry. Thank you.
Right.
Terrific. Good.
Yes. Sorry, I do write in large print on my emails there. My fading eyesight is
I'm not getting any younger. All right. Well, thank you very much for those. We have appointments starting at 6. The Finance Committee has joined us, I think. Yep, there they are. And we'll begin that on time at 6. So let's move forward to old business. The community action food pantry services, the possible funding sources. We discussed the possibility of using housing trust funds to cover the gap. Buckland asked us if we were willing to make a decision about whether that was something we wanted to move forward with. They asked us for 2 points. A structure where we'd appoint one member of the board to join one member of the Buckland board, to invite the community action to a meeting to discuss the minimum dollar amount needed to keep food pantry services in place for another year, for 2 years maximum, with the goal of the community action finding new and/or alternative ways to fund the operations in our community. The other thing they wanted us to consider was, if both boards are in agreement with suggested dollar amount, each town will seek approval for the said appropriation from the Housing Trust Fund at the respective meetings. There is information on the packet that you received as well. Discussing it. It was run by a lawyer for Buckland. The process is all aesthetic, I will say, and we can do that if we so choose. Buckland indicated Friday, January 31st, that they can commit for 25,000 for 2 years, for a total of 50,000 available starting July 1st the next fiscal year. The interesting thing I found in this, and then I'll open it up to discussion, is which was the wheel chart that we received like 10 minutes before our meeting 2 weeks ago, and none of us had to study it. And they had originally told us a figure of like 50,000 or 300 and something thousand or whatever it was to run the West County Food Pantry. They gave us a new number, which turned out to be wrong. We came back and said about 10 minutes.
Rick,
Rick, you're
I'm
starting to
sorry to
break up.
interrupt. Yeah, you're breaking up. It's doing some kind of weird, almost feedbacky.
I'm so sorry. I don't know why
Not
that.
the technical term I should say to somebody who used to work in radio, but that's the best I can do.
Okay. Uh, so looking at the chart that we have, the interesting thing is Shelburne and Buckland are paying $50,000 a year combined for a $104,599 budget for the West County Food Pantry. Yet, when we look at those people taking use of that location, that's approximately half of the people that use it, followed by Coleraine, Ashfield, Greenfield, Charlemont, in bigger chunks, and then a whole bunch of other towns. And Andrew, I believe, am I out again?
No, I just was, when you're done, I wanted to add a comment about your numbers there.
And so I think it was you, Andrew, who brought up the question previously, asking what are the numbers, who's using it, and should other towns be asked to chip in? So I was just kind of setting up the overview of where we've been and what got us here, and now I'll open it to discussion. Andrew, one question?
Just to clarify, I hope we can come to clarity on the budget numbers for running the West County Food Pantry. My understanding, when I did some follow-up with the woman who came to our meeting, she confirmed that the $350,000 number was the overall budget number for their entire operation, including Greenfield. And I thought she said that the West County pantry budget was 50,000 and that Shelburne and Buckland were essentially funding the whole thing out of 100% out of the block grant costs up until this year. So this is the first I've heard that it's $100,000 operation.
Well, she did confirm that, and you shared that with us, or she shared it with us, by email. But on January 28th, also in your packet, the email she sent, she wrote, "I want to clarify that the total budget for the West County Food Pantry is $104,599. The CDBG grants from Shelburne and Buckland are approximately half of this budget, being the 50,000.
Okay.
So-
That's different information than was communicated to me before. So
As I say, it's in your packet with the chart that shows the use of that. So I think it's a legitimate question of, geez, we are footing the bill, and we use about half, or Buckland and Shelburne residents use about half of the activity that they support, being a West County. So all the other towns are getting this service basically at the expense of Buckland and Shelburne. And I reference that only to their request for us to consider, if both boards are in agreement, with suggested dollar amounts, seek approval for the appropriation of those funds at the respective town meetings. So did anyone have any concerns or options, or do we need to make a decision on this at this point without further consideration? If you guys want to think about asking other towns to help chip in, or is that something that we can continue what we've been doing right along, funding it between us and Buckland, and for that 2-year term that they're talking about, in the meantime of that 2 years, try and get the food pantry folks to look at other towns, asking other towns to support it as well. But just food for thought as I studied this question and document. I wanted to make sure we all Tricia, did you have it?
Yeah, I guess so there's I guess two ways to look at it. We provide half of the funds and we also use half of the services. So it's kind of like a tit for tat in that sense. But on the other hand, where does all the other 50% come? It's not coming from the other towns. It sounds like it says it's coming up from donations, grants, and federal sources. So all those other towns that are also using it aren't putting anything into it. And really, Shelburne is the largest, if we can call it, donor or supporter of this, with at 31% of the funding, or 31% of the users of this service. So, I mean, we're kind of like the good neighbor to everyone, I suppose, right? That we're supporting this thing a great deal, and everybody else gets to use it besides Buckland. I don't know. I think it is kind of an interesting predicament. I guess if I were Buckland, I'd say, well, geez, we give 25% of the budget and we only use it 20% of the time. If the chart is accurate. So I think it's been a problem for a while that the costs of this haven't been more equitably distributed. Maybe they can't be, just because of the towns not having funding for this or not considering it. But I guess moving forward, I would want to see a little bit more help from some of the other towns that also use it, even if it's just a little bit. Every little bit helps. And then I guess my second question is, was Buckland expecting us to, I saw on the email from January 31st from Heather that Buckland can commit to $25,000 for 2 years. And is that what they're kind of expecting Shelburne to do too, is to agree to the 25,000 for 2 years? And is that to be coming out of the housing fund?
That's the only place it can come out of, unless the town applies for an infrastructure project through the Community Development Block Grant Program.
Okay. That's those are just the comments I have. I'm not sure I have I guess the question is, do we want to put that in the budget or not? Or do we want to say we're not going to fund $25,000 each year, or we could do 30 one year and 20 the next, just so they get used to maybe the community action food pantry can get used to the idea of trying to find more donors, more town supporters.
Carrie?
I think it's worth having a conversation with the food pantry program to see what their expectations are of us. I mean, they did initially say that the $50,000 contributed by the block grant funded their program. But now that we see this wheel, maybe they would be willing to reach out to the communities that also play a larger role. To see, I mean, everyone's limited to the funding sources because of the anti-aid amendment, but it'd be worth the discussion with the food pantry to see what's the minimum amount that they could receive from both towns and still keep the food pantry at that location.
That's a good idea.
Andrew?
I guess to move that conversation more expeditiously toward both the community action in terms of giving us more information about their own budgetary contributions to this project, and to have them engage more expeditiously with the other participating towns, I would recommend just funding it a year at a time, rather than making a 2-year commitment and just saying, yeah, we'll put in $25,000 from our housing trust fund this year, But we want to see a good faith effort to engage in this joint fundraising project together so that we all are putting our oars in the water.
I think also interesting food for thought, when we first discussed this a couple weeks ago, we were under the impression that 200, could you please mute your phone, Joe?
I don't think you can mute phone, but I'll try it.
Oh,
Oh,
you
I
got
got him.
there he is.
When we discussed it originally, we thought there was 205,000 plus in
Mm.
Housing Trust Fund, and further investigation revealed there's 95,811. So if we, I agree with you, Andrew, if we commit 50,000 of that, we've got that pared down pretty far, not leaving any of it for the possibility of using for actual housing. So I'm in favor of reaching out to them, asking for consideration to ask other towns to kick in some share based on the wheel that they supplied us of use. See if that goes anywhere. Ask them what the minimum contribution to get them to last another year would be, and take it up at a future meeting, as opposed to making a decision on it at this point without that kind of information, because the well's going to be gone in 2 years if the current source from Shelburne is the housing authority money or housing trust fund money. It's not sustainable. So they need to do something, and why not start now, or ask them to start now? Anyone have any other thoughts than that?
Only
I
that-
like that. Sorry, go ahead.
Only that I think the math works, Rick. If we committed our entire housing trust fund to this project, we would have 4 years at the current spend rate to spend it all the way down. Not that I'm recommending that, but that would be, as far as we could go with the housing trust fund.
Yep. And I'd have a hard time supporting that as well, but not that you said you didn't or would, but I would have a problem spending that all down. I think given that we contribute 25% of the total budget, and are getting about 31% of the use overall, that there's room for looking into other options.
Yeah, I think we need to have our own conversation about what is the future of the block grant program, and do we want to go back in that direction, and how are we going to do that, and all the rest of it.
So that sounds like that needs to get on an agenda in the future to talk about it, because that's not the first time that's come up. And but we haven't really discussed it as an agenda item. It always ends up being kind of a sidebar conversation. So maybe that would be a good idea for a future meeting. I like the idea of just committing us to some amount for 1 year. I think that's a good idea. I'm a little uncomfortable with the 25,000. I think we're matching what Buckland can do, but I also think that there's other towns that could help, and maybe we don't need to actually contribute 25. So having that conversation with Community Action sounds like a really good idea, to see what their plans are this year, to try to get some other towns to chip in even a little bit if they can, and then be clear with them that we're only committing to this for 1 year. That's a big chunk out of that housing fund, and I don't think it's great that we would use what in essence would be a little bit more than half of it for the food pantry for the next 2 years.
So the matter before us is that the Buckland Select Board wanted to see if Shelburne was interested in the following, and that being appoint one member of our board to join one for their board for that kind of a conversation. So I'm in support of that. It sounds like Tricia is. Andrew?
Yes.
Who would like to be that?
Well, if it's during the day, I'm happy to do it. Or Terry, you were going to volunteer, I guess.
Well, I think that inquiry was made at the very beginning of this discussion. Since then, both boards have been in conversation with community action. So I'm not sure Buckland, I'm not sure that offer still is a viable option. I would have to check with Heather first.
It's undated. I thought it was new. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
no, that was the initial conversation with Buckland maybe 2 months ago.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Terry, can you clarify what is that? Are you talking about their offer of 2 years of 25,000 or of the offer to meet with us?
Initially, Buckland suggested that a member of the select board from each town meet with the food pantry representatives. But then you had invited a representative in to meet with the board. So Buckland followed suit and invited a representative in. So the idea of a collective meeting sort of been done. I'm more than happy to follow up with both Heather and West County Food Pantry to see if we can solidify what's needed for the coming year, if anything.
Okay. Then let's do that and take care of this in 2 weeks.
I think that's a great plan, Terry. I think one of the other, I mean, two of the other pieces of information I would love to have is to find out if Ashfield and Coleraine in particular, and maybe some of the smaller towns on that pie chart, have any other non-municipal resources to put into the pot. Because that would be the starting point of the wider sharing. And then I'd love to know what sources of funding community action uses to fund this budget and what their ideas are for non-municipal contributions.
Well, they did say that they get donations, grants, and federal sources. Is
Yeah.
that not, you want more detail than that?
Yeah,
Is that
maybe
what
a
you're
little more
asking
detail
for?
in terms of, I mean, because they're, as everybody is looking at, some possibly large changes coming down the pike here in terms of federal resources in particular, which will, domino down into the state budgets too. And so it would be good to know what they're forecasting rather than just saying state and federal resources.
Well, let's do that
Okay.
then. Go ahead and reach out to Buckland and uh, the community action for that kind of feedback, and we'll see what they say for our next meeting. Everybody good with that?
Yes. Thank you.
We are short 2 minutes away from appointment. We are this evening going to have presentations at 6 from the town clerk, at 6:30 Shelburne Free Public Library, 6:45 Arms Library, and then we have a discussion with the highway superintendent if he's available this evening. You said he was out today, Andrew, so I believe, yes, Joe Judd is on, our town clerk, and Finance Committee is on board. We have Todd and
Jim Burnham.
there. I have the tiniest screen. Hi, Jim. Hi, Todd.
Hi, how you guys doing?
Great.
Good.
All right, Joe. Are you on now? If you are, Terry, did you mute him or does he mute him? He's muted.
I'm asking to unmute.
I think it's *6 on a phone. I'm not sure. Oh, there you are,
Hello?
Joe. Hi, Joe.
Okay. I didn't think you could mute your phone. I don't know how that happened. I guess just because Rick told me to do it, it did it. So anyway, I'm sorry that I interrupted you there. I was just clearing my throat.
No worries.
So where do you want to start?
Well, let's start on page 1 of your document. Is there
So
any,
tell me what you have in front of you first, and then we'll go from there.
okay, we have the overall personnel cost, town clerk salary, assistant, personnel
Okay.
cost, and total appropriate in that category.
Okay, so the personnel costs, I have a larger number there than previous years. I did that based on the fact that I have known for a number of years that Shelburne, the town clerk position in Shelburne has not been compensated on the same level as other towns. I say that knowing that a few years ago I did get a raise of like $1 an hour, I think it was, which I know we don't really pay by the hour, but that's how it sort of played out. But I sent a survey out that really gave you, I hope, a decent overview that was simple to follow in relation to 9 other towns that I thought that were sort of on a comparison to Shelburne in relation to what the town pays the town clerk's position. Some of them are elected. That's why the hourly number is there, because to some of these town clerks, they're appointed. They're not elected, so the hourly rate means a lot to them. Others are still elected, like Buckland, Coleraine, Shelburne, others. And the comparison there is pretty clear based on the size of the towns and the way I tried to set it up that was simple to read. I came up with this number by taking the same amount that the town clerk in Buckland, because I feel we're very comparable. I took the number that the town clerk was paid from Buckland last year. I added $1,000 to it because I felt that the fact that I've been in the role going on 11 years now meant something. And I thought that was a fair way. It's not the highest that you see in this scale. It's not the lowest, but I thought it was fair. So I came up with that number.
Thank you. We all have had that for a bit and reviewed it as well. Any questions? We'll begin with Tricia, Andrew.
I was muted too, sorry. So it's quite clear, and thank you for being here, Joe. We know the elections a lot of things wouldn't work without you, so we're glad that you're here and you bring your expertise to that. It's quite clear that Shelburne doesn't pay on par with the other towns. No matter how you slice it, I actually looked at many different ways. I know, Joe, thank you for calculating the per hour rate, but I also did it just to get another couple of views on it. Took the salary and divided it by the number of registered voters and also by the number of people in the population, because it's not just elections that the town clerk does, right? It's also birth and death certificates and a lot of other things. So that gave me kind of an idea of where we're paying as well. And even using those other 2 metrics, Shelburne is really underpaying for the town clerk services. I was curious, Joe, if you could tell us, because I know you had mentioned something about some of the towns pay a stipend for working each election. If you could explain that a little bit too.
Yeah, well, in particular, the town of Buckland pays a stipend, and I just found this out, as does a few other towns that I checked with. In that particular town, it's like $250 per election. Now, I got to be clear about that because I'm not totally sure. I'm not totally sure if they paid it last year or if this is something that the town clerk is asking for this year. But that is definitely in the mix going forward. In that town, other towns also receive a compensation for each election. And I sort of think of that as a little bit, I find it uncomfortable as part of my duties to run the elections, to be the chief election official. I think it's much better suited to be incorporated into the actual salary itself, rather than to be paying so much for each election. Some years you would make it for 4 elections. Some year there's 1 election. Some years there's 2 elections. I'd rather just see a fair salary be paid and figured that that is a number that is equitable in relation to the duties that I work under. And so yes, some of them do, but I would not ask for that.
And then
I'd just rather see it.
Mhm, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Tricia. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess because the one concern I have about that is with the town clerk, really it's an elected position that's only for a year. We could find ourselves in a situation of hopefully not anytime soon. I want to be clear about that, but we could be in a situation where somebody's just running 1 year and then they leave and then they come back, 5 years later or 3 years later when there's going to be 4 elections to get the stipend or whatever. If we're making something in the budget, and this might be a question for the finance committee, if we're going to put something in the budget for the salary for the town clerk based on longevity in that role, then if you decide not to run again, Joe, then we're losing your, is it 11 years of experience that we've been paying for, then we're going to reduce the salary the following year because we might get a totally new person who doesn't have that experience.
I don't think we are basing it strictly on that, Tricia. I think it was quite clear that the comparison of numbers, we are underpaying based on comparable towns. He then say these people are getting that much more money than we are paying in Shelburne, and they don't have 11 years behind them. So to me, it's more about pay equity because, as you know, not in the case of town, excuse me, not in the case of town clerk, but pirating other towns' people because they aren't being paid well is happening everywhere and something we need to pay attention to. So,
Yep.
Andrew, would you like to comment on anything before we go to the finance committee?
Just Joe, if you could clarify what the hourly rate is that you're proposing for your new amount.
25.
Well, yeah, it's in the
it's 25.
it's
69.
no, that's my old salary, Rick. I didn't put the new in there. I didn't feel comfortable putting my new salary in there until I got it. So I was comparing to every other town in regards to what I'm making today or what the town clerk's making today. So that's an old hourly rate.
Right.
I have to do the numbers on the new hourly rate, Andrew, but I think it would be fairly close to $32 or $33 an hour.
That seems right because you in the sheet on your budget request form you have $34,464, which is $1,000 more than Buckland, as you said, and the Buckland rate at the same hours because you both work 20 is $32.18 an hour. So it would be just slightly higher than that.
Yeah, be a little higher than that. Yep.
And that cover you, Andrew? Go to the finance committee, or you have a question?
That answers my question. Thank you.
Finance committee.
Yeah, hi guys, how you doing? So, obviously we don't have everybody here, so this is just gonna be my opinion on this. And, I'm happy with where we're at with, increasing the budget. I mean, the salary for this, and like we were talking, it's more about getting the clerks, I'm glad Joe's doing it, and he's doing a great job. But this is bringing the clerk's position equitable with the other towns. And I did a quick little search a week or two ago, and I came up with pretty much exactly the same numbers, and the only one I didn't look at was Leverett. So I think we're going in the right direction with that piece, about the position.
Yeah, the information Joe's providing to us on his analysis here, it's pretty clear that we're paying less than most everybody else is in the area. So that was real good information to have. I think we had a comment a couple of minutes ago about well, maybe when we have a new town clerk, when Joe no longer runs and somebody else gets elected, we have one with less experience, we pay them less money. I don't believe you can. It's an elected position. The town salary is set by the budget and by what's voted at town meeting. And when the town clerk gets elected, that's the salary they get. I don't think, if they don't work for the Board of Selectmen, so you can't give them less money.
Thanks
Right.
for that.
Thank
Yeah,
you, Jim.
That's true. Yep.
Great. All right, let's move on to the next line item, which is an assistant position in the town clerk's office. $3,500 is the request. Joe, how many hours was that for? Can you tell us?
Well, I lowered that number on purpose after I gave it a lot of thought. This person he or she will not be an assistant town clerk. They will just be an assistant as Buckland has on a as needed basis. And talking with Alicia, she said it's been really good working that way, because when she needs her assistant, they come in. She has one person that is her assistant. They work together. She's learning things as they go. And I asked her how often she needs her, and she said, well, it's certainly need her more during the election periods and the census time. But basically, she's not quite using up her $5,000 is what I'm trying to get at. She's closer to what I've asked for at the end of the fiscal year. So I don't see any reason to ask for $5,000 at this point in time. I think once we get to a place where we have a regular assistant town clerk, which is a little more detailed in both cost and duties and knowledge, this might draw itself out to be a little different. But right now, I'm looking for an assistant that I can start teaching things to, that can be a great help to a new town clerk coming in if they decided they didn't want to run themselves. And I mean, it could be someone from not from Shelburne. I would prefer it be from Shelburne, but there's no set in stone, that would have to be that way. But I would certainly prefer it to be someone from Shelburne, and I would be looking for that person. So this is the amount of money that I feel I can start with for 1 year to have an assistant in here. Based on what I was told from the town clerk in Buckland, she doesn't spend $5,000, so I can't see myself needing an assistant any more than she does, and I just thought it would be not necessarily frugal to ask for more money than what I might need. And at the end of this year, I'll know better as to what this number should be.
I think that having someone in an assistant position makes total sense in your office, Joe. I forget how many laws and regulations you keep track of. You quoted it to me once, and it even didn't stick. But
There's 248 laws and regulations that I work under, and I don't know them all. So please don't ask me.
And so I don't have a problem particularly with this line item. You do already hire your election workers for assistance during those times. This really is focused on more the day in, day out operations of the town clerk's office. Is that correct?
That is, and if I could just elaborate on that, I want whoever this person ends up being, I'm hoping that they'll be committed enough to where they'll want to learn, because there's so much to teach them from a standpoint to where when a new town clerk does come into the role, this person can be that individual who can help them if they're not totally experienced to the point where we might like them to be. This person's going to know how to do a death certificate. They're going to know how to do a marriage certificate. They're going to know how to do marriage intentions. They're going to know how to register somebody to vote. They're going to understand the census to a certain degree. They're going to be able to go into the computer and show them where things are in the vault. I mean, I see this as a relatively long-term position that I think will be a real benefit to the town in this role when I'm either someday not able to do this job or I decide not to run again. And that said, I got to be careful. I'm not assuming anything. I could have someone run against me and win. And if that were the case, this person could also be a very great assistance to them. And that's exactly what I would want, because
gonna be.
You know, I want to leave this role someday in a place where there's someone there that can really keep the town moving in the right direction in regards to this department.
I'm not sure if everyone has dug through the recently updated COG wage and study survey for fiscal year 2025. But I gave it a quick look, and just for reference, if you haven't seen this, the towns in the COG's report where there is an assistant: Bernardston, Deerfield, Irving, Hill, Greenfield, Montague, Northfield, Orange, Rowe, Wendell, and Whately. So it seems like a prudent thing that other towns have already figured out. But let's open it up to discussion. Same order. Tricia? Any comments, thoughts?
I was just looking at the math again, and I'm wondering, is that going to be the right salary for us? I'm looking compared to Buckland, we're pretty much on par with, they're paying $32.18, excluding the possible stipend for elections. The new salary Joe's asking for is $33.14 for basically an hour, for basically the same population. But then I look at Ashfield, and Ashfield, well, I guess they come out to $29.22. The average is about $29.42 for all the towns, excluding Shelburne. So I think this is decent. If we could find more, that would be great. But I think with this and the assistant, I like Joe. I really like that you're looking to the future by having an assistant who can be trained and then help whoever succeeds you when that horrible day arrives.
Andrew, any thoughts?
I guess I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that, with the idea that we're going to go in 1 year from being toward the bottom of the pay scale to being at the top of the pay scale. So I guess I would think it would be more politic, let's say, to take it in stages.
You're looking at, however, figures that are current for the current fiscal year, and we're talking about his number for next fiscal year. We don't know what the next fiscal year numbers are for these other towns, so it may not be the disparity that you see on the surface.
I also would challenge that, because I think at $33.14 an hour, which is what his new salary would be, that's still kind of in the middle. It's not at the very top. Leverett is at the top at 38. And then there's somebody, let's see. No, I guess you're right. It would be second to Leverett. But Buckland is at $32 an hour.
Deerfield's at 40.
Well, Deerfield charges half an arm to go to their transfer station.
Well, that's
Right. If I could interject for a second,
yes.
and to
Joe.
Andrew's question, so that Rick's right on that, Andrew, is that these numbers that you're seeing in that survey, those are all numbers that are based on this fiscal year. I know that at least 3 of those town clerks are seeking 10 to 12% more in their salaries for the next year. So I am trying to base it on this year's numbers from the town that I thought was the most comparable. I don't think you're going to see me at the top of the pay scale. And remember that $3,500 is for an assistant. That's her pay. So this $37,964, and I'm sure you understand that $37,964 is my salary plus an assistant. So I don't think there's any fear in me being at the top of the pay scale in the next year or two.
Finance Committee, your comments are invited.
Yeah, I'm okay with where we're at with the town clerk and the assistant salary. Those two combined together, they're still on Joe's list. There's 2 other towns whose just clerk salaries are more than our combined. And like Joe was saying, those salaries are gonna go up next year, so I'm okay with it.
My comment is, I would prefer on the budget request form that the term assistant be taken out of there and put in hours for clerical help. I think we're getting a lot of implication here that we're creating a new town position called assistant town clerk, and I don't think that is the case. Not according to the way Joe presented it.
That's a good point.
Joe, do you have a problem with?
No, that is true. I just like to make sure that I clarify what Jim said. So, Jim, when you say clerical help, do you mean that that this person could be going from one department to the next, or basically this is a person that works in the town clerk's office?
When this person is working for the town clerk, the salary comes out of the town clerk's budget. If this person is working for a different department of the town, their salary would come out of that department's budget.
Okay, so you're talking about sort of a roguing or a moving part, so to speak, a circuit riding assistant or a circuit riding clerical helper. I don't agree with that, Jim. I'm respectfully, because I think that the person that I'm proposing here needs to be focused on the work that we do in the town clerk's office. I think that's an important position to understand. And Jim, one other thing, assistant town clerk, there's statutes that are a part of what an assistant town clerk's role and their duties are. This person is not an assistant town clerk. If there's a better way to put it, I'd be happy to do that. But I think it's important that she focus on the work that and the training that she's going to receive from working in the town clerk's office.
How about if we made that line item assistant to the clerk?
Anything like that, but I think we really need to resolve Jim's question, because I think we're not on the same page with that, and I'd like to hear more dialogue about it.
Jim, I got the impression you weren't suggesting this be a roving position, that you were.
I was not suggesting that at all.
Okay. So.
Okay. All right. Okay. Then I misunderstood you, Jim. I'm sorry.
I'm just using that as an example.
Yep. I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
About whether the salary would come from his budget when this person was working for somebody else. And no, if that happened to be a roving person, no, whatever department they're working for is where the salary would come from.
Okay.
No, I understand.
Roving person.
Yep.
That's
on me, Jim. I misunderstood you. I'm sorry.
Let's consider assistant to the clerk wording as opposed to assistant, which may lead.
That's perfect. That sounds perfect.
We've got like 7 minutes left before our next appointment. We've got through the first page. Let's move on. We'll have further time to consider.
The rest of these are pretty simple. So I'm on personnel costs. This is the
budget request for operating cost, office supplies, dues, conferences.
Yes. Yeah, I brought that up by $100 because I think dues and conferences are going to go up next year. And I have much more. I am going to have many to attend next year because I need to learn new systems on the vital records programs and a new system on the election program, which is going to go live in just a few days. One of them is. And our conferences are 3 times a year, and I think there's going to be some in between. So I'm asking for an additional $100 there to cover that cost.
So that we can get through the next 4 pages of this. Anyone have any specifics they feel they want to bring up on this page?
No. It's pretty straightforward.
Hearing none, we'll go to the next. This is records preservation, records imaging, total of $7,000. 2024 expended was $12,000. And nothing was budgeted for 2025 and 2026. We're looking at a $7,000 request. Any specific questions or comments on this.
Is there a reason that there was nothing done this year, but that you anticipate being able to do it next year, Joe?
There was a misunderstanding, I think, and it's all behind us now in relation to that budget item. I think the fact that there was so much in the 2024 is because I had encumbered some money to carry over there. I did spend it all, but before the end of the fiscal year. But I think that I think there was some misunderstanding. Last year, somehow it got through the cracks and nothing was appropriated in the budget, which means I'm a year behind. So this year I've asked for 6,000 rather than 5, which will allow me to do 2 books in regards to preserving, collating, and binding those books. When I say the books, they're like a 10-year period of vital records. So that would be like 20 years of vital records that we can get done this year.
Great.
And then the records image, excuse me?
I say great. It makes total sense. I think we
Yep.
are up to speed. Anyone have any comments or questions on that one? Andrew?
Have you applied for CPA funding to do this work?
No, but that's in my mind. But there's something else in my mind for
This is
that.
an eligible expense that we could be doing at half the cost we're paying now.
Okay, well, I did not do that for this year, Andrew. And as you know, I did put one request in.
Food for thought.
So what do you suggest? What do you suggest?
Well, it's too late to apply for this year, but I'm just suggesting to you that that's an eligible expense that you can get a 50% discount on now.
Okay, well, I will definitely keep that in mind for next year.
Finance Committee, any comments, questions on this page?
No, we're good.
All right, we're moving right along. Second to last page, this is food for workers, ballot box, supplies, advertising, miscellaneous election workers. Previous current fiscal year request was 12,450. 2026 request is 12,350. Anybody have any questions or comments or looking for more information on this? None from the Finance Committee, none here. Okay, last item is registrars, envelopes, supply, binding, census prep, census mailing. 2025 request was 2,150. This year's request 2,350. Sorry. Anyone have questions or comments on this page? Seeing none, hearing none. Joe, well, thank you for your time. Anything?
I have one comment on that.
Fire away.
And it'll be very brief. I got word Thursday, that the cost of paper in relation to the census was going to be going up by 3%. I did not incorporate that in this budget, but I believe that this number will suffice.
Terrific. Thank you for the presentation, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you guys very much. Take care.
You too.
Okay, 6:30, we have a 15-minute block scheduled for the Shelburne Free Public Library budget presentation. And who do we have from the library? From Shelburne Free.
Hi, this is Ted Sicker. I'm the treasurer.
Okay, Ted? Floor is
Hi, Betsy Antea. I am the library director.
Terrific. Who would like to give us a quick overview of your budget requests or any highlights you want to call our attention to?
Sure, I'll start and then Betsy can offer some more clarification. The overall budget, we haven't made that many changes from last year's request. The main highlights would be that for staffing, we have the same number of hours with the same staff, just with the 3% raise that the town had suggested. technology budget is based on the actual numbers for our internet connection through CW Mars, and then what we've generally been spending in past years for the software and other kinds of hardware needs. Programming, we cut back to half of what we had in our previous budget because we found that we couldn't maintain a children's reading program because of staffing. So we're doing different kinds of speaker and arts and crafts kind of programming. Betsy can talk about that if you're interested. Electricity, we raised slightly because rates have been going up. Same thing with fuel oil. Supplies and services as well. The materials for distribution is level. CW Mars is the actual fee that we've been quoted for the next year. Biggest change is on our maintenance line. And there, we now are paying for our own cleaner to come to the library every other week. In the past, the town had an employee who was coming weekly, and that's been discontinued. And beyond that, pretty much the same. So the overall request that we asked is 3% higher than the appropriation for last year. But when it comes down to subtracting off what the town paid in the last fiscal year for the cleaner, which we figured to be $1,764, I think that the request is actually lower than last year's request.
Terrific. Betsy, did you want to make any comments?
Not really. I mean, if anybody has any questions for me,
Yeah, the town, they paid 1764 for the town fee.
What?
was that directed to me?
I couldn't hear you.
Jim, did you want to share that? We heard something.
We were just local clarification here.
Okay.
So we'll start. Tricia or Andrew, anyone have any questions or comments?
Just one question. Are you guys pursuing any way to reduce your fuel bill?
Well, we've already installed a heat pump. So we use that for air conditioning in the summer and for heating when it's above 40 degrees right now. We found that it wasn't working that well setting lower than that. And I don't know, we did talk about trying to look into getting a new ceiling fan that might blow the heat down a little bit. Right now, the ceiling fan that we have is old and it's not very efficient and we can't reverse it.
Thank you.
Andrew, any thoughts, comments?
No.
Finance Committee?
We're good.
We're good.
Thank you.
Easy. I didn't mention for the audience who views these things later on, which I'm finding out more and more people actually do. Last year's request was $54,179. This year, $57,209. Those are the two bottom line numbers.
Rick,
Yes, Terry.
just that the town's share of their total budget was 39,296 in FY25, and this year they're requesting 40,475.
And that's on that line under income, the first line, town appropriation. And so that's a 3% increase being requested, which kind of corresponds with the raises. And you guys did a good job of kind of moving things around to try to balance things out. I appreciate that very much.
Terrific.
Welcome.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Okay.
Have a good evening.
Good night. Thank
too.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
We are a little early for our next appointment, but it's not a public hearing. Is someone here from the library? I'm sorry, from the Arms Library to make the presentation? Oh, Lori, perhaps.
Dan Alden is here, Rick.
You're muted, Dan. You're muted.
Okay,
There you go.
yeah, Lori is here also, so I'll give her a chance to talk first if she'd like to.
Yeah, I'm struggling. All right,
Didn't
I'm
see you
giving,
there.
can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you, yeah.
Okay, hi. So I was going to work on some more notes, but thank you all for taking the time this evening. And I just wanted to note that, let me grab the right piece of paper. We've been, so you know Dan already, and eventually John Cornman is going to join us, and then Breon Brennis, who will be our new chairperson, and she's going to be really good to work with. And so I just wanted to say that Dan will take care of the more budget type things. And well, at the library with the trustees and talking with like other librarians and things, we continue to like actively work on strategies to create a representational fair request to make to both of our two towns, because we're looking for the best stewardship of the Arms Library. And some of the things we continue to talk about formula for determining the amounts that each town pays and gives to us, and then and then talking about maybe working toward creating a memorandum of understanding and just having more conversations about creating the strongest 3 libraries that we can. And Dan will be able to speak to the formula because that's what, I mean, it's obviously, it's showing how we came up with our budget. Another thing we're looking at, we're continuing to work on the elevator replacement project. And I think I'm rambling, and I just think it's all, at this point, it's just all the more important that we all try to work together to support all of our libraries, because we will possibly encounter challenges to access of materials and information. And I'm sorry I stumbled through that. Dan, could you please take over? Oh my gosh.
Well, thanks, Lori. Sure. So I'll just talk about basically our budget request, and I did send that to Terry, so hopefully everyone participating got a copy of that. So the bottom line is we're asking for a total of $41,513, which is a 2.5% increase over the prior fiscal year. And basically our goal is simply to keep even with inflation. That's all we're trying to do. We're not trying to expand or contract. We're just trying to keep even with inflation. The formula that was used in the past couple of years, that was developed by an ad hoc committee consisting of Margaret Payne and Barry DeCastillo. That doesn't seem to be working out. So basically, that formula, that prior formula, which was somewhat complicated, isn't being used anymore. So we're asking of both towns a 2.5% increase. Once again, just to keep with inflation. So it's pretty much a simple request. If there are particular questions about budget line items, I'd be happy to answer those. But I think it's in keeping with our 6-month expenditure so far. Let me just add that the wages represent the total wages represents a 3% increase, which is in keeping with what the town is doing with other employees. So with that, I guess I'd open it up to questions.
I'll start with a quick one, if I may. The 3% you just referenced, I did just visual math on the executive directors. Seems to be north of 5%. Is that correct?
Well, if you did the math, I believe you.
It's in my head, but
part of that may have been based upon. Well, I guess if you look, well, hours vary throughout the year. In other words, there's a certain number of hours a minimum number of hours, but because of people being absent or sick, very often the director has to step in and work some of their hours also. So as you can see, if you look at the 6-month line, that's 21,000 approximately, and our request is 42,000. So it doesn't represent an hourly. In other words, the hourly increase would just be 3%. What that represents, the overage above 3% represents additional hours that, from a past experience, we've seen that the director, in fact, has been taking on. But once again, the total for all people, in other words, obviously, if Lori is working and somebody else is sick, if she's working in their place, they are not being paid. So overall, we were able to come up with a budget item that is just 3% for all wages.
terrific. Andrew, I think you had a question.
Yeah, just 2 questions. On the payroll tax line, you show in 2024 you spent $6,358. How is it you managed to reduce that amount if your payroll is actually going up?
Well, that's a good question. Once again, I guess it's based upon, it is based upon the 6 month that we spent so far in.
No, I'm looking at last year's amount. The total you spent was $6,358.
Right, and we're asking only $5,500 this.
Right, but how are you going to make the payroll taxes go down if your payroll is going up?
Once again, okay, so this is a request for 2026. The most recent data is 2025, but we only have 6 months worth of that data, correct?
Yeah.
So if you were to extend the 6 months of 2025, you could assume twice of that 2660 is what, about $5,200, $5,300. So
Okay.
So if that's what we're going to spend in 2025, $5,300, it is certainly much less than what you expended in fiscal year 2024, the 6,000 you were referring to. But all I can say is maybe payroll taxes went down. I'm not really sure.
Okay. It seemed like a very fixed kind of budgeting question, but unless there's some numbers in there that I'm not understanding, but anyway, leave that aside. The other number I had a question about was, explain to me how the maintenance line works in this budget, because you've budgeted 7,000 last year, this year, and next year, but you've only spent $400.
Right. Okay. So, so I guess in this case, well, maintenance items can be very variable from year to year. And so I guess the 7,000 is to cover us from the very often the unexpected things that come up. The 7,000 really doesn't represent planned maintenance. It's basically realizing that we could be hit with well, in the past, what we've been hit with are bills for repairing the elevator, for instance, or the heating system, the heat pump that we had that totally shut down at one point, and that was costly to get that fixed. These aren't planned things, so all I can say is we wanted to basically keep the same amount as we had for our 2025 request. And you can see in the actual expenditures for 2024, it was $6,300. Is that right? No, I'm sorry,
No.
$7,790. Right. So that was even more than 7,000 for 2024. Like I said, the fact we've only spent $409 for half of this current fiscal year we're in now does seem surprisingly low, but it's just the uncertainty. That's all.
But
There,
does that line include just cleaning the building and stuff? I thought you had hired Davis to be your maintainer.
Okay, so regarding the cleaning of the building, that $7,000 does not, in particular, include paying someone for cleaning the building. And the reason that, at least in this initial request, and of course it can certainly be amended, is that we haven't finalized our negotiations regarding our request to review the lease that the building has. And as part of that renegotiation, well, in the past, the town has paid for someone to come in and clean it. So this budget here is assuming that's going to go forward, even though there has been some side discussions about the library paying for its own cleaning services. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess, and I'm not gonna bring that whole discussion into our small amount of time we have here tonight, but just to say that in looking at the split between Shelburne and Buckland, I have advocated that we should not have off-budget expenses that the town just sort of pays on the side without factoring them into how that impacts the overall percentage split. Because those are hidden costs that then, would it actually inflate Shelburne's side of the ledger there in terms of the actual percentage that we're paying, if we knew what those costs were.
in the past, I think Terry did provide us with a list of those costs, maybe even last year.
Yes, she did. And I can't recall offhand. I'd have to look it up. I think it was about $2,300 or something like that when Terry gave us an estimate. Perhaps you remember a different number, Terry. I don't know. But it was somewhere $2,000, $3,000 a year.
Harry, do you have that?
I don't have that figure available, but when the board agreed to hire Mr. Bates as your cleaner, Lori specifically asked if the town was going to continue paying for the cleaning. And Andrew suggested at that time that that be included in your budget so that it was a better financial picture when splitting the total budget between the two towns.
Okay. Yes, I understand your point. I guess our point was we were thinking it made sense to finalize the lease, and in the lease, we would identify exactly what different responsibilities there were between the landlord, which is the town of Shelburne owning the building, and the library as a tenant. And that the cleaning services would be part of that negotiation, and therefore that's why it was left out of this budget. But if the Shelburne Board and Finance Committee would like us to include that again, I mean, not again, but include a line item for cleaning services for the library that the library will pay going forward. I just wasn't aware that that had been determined to be the case, definitely for sure. And that's why it's left out of here. But if that is the case, definitely for sure, regardless of what happens with the lease, then by all means we'll include it in the budget. And if anything, I mean, my thought would be, just for simplicity, at least for right now, you're right, we haven't spent very much of that $7,000 that we had budgeted for 2025, our current fiscal year. We've only spent $409 of that. So cleaning, at least for the next, well, if we, for the cleaning for the next half of this year, certainly will fit under that budget. And in fact, if there were, if you consider that carryover from that budget line item, what I'm saying, I'm sorry, I'm trying to say,
I understand what you're
we
saying.
could leave that number just where it is, and I think we could cover the $2,000 to $3,000, and we'd work it out. So, in other words, if the board and the finance committee would like us to have an actual separate line item, I will redo this budget request and put it in there. But the bottom line is we're not going to ask more than 2.5% increase anyway. So either we just take it out of the line item that says maintenance, we take out the $2,000 to $3,000, whatever the estimate was, and reduce maintenance by that much and add another line item that would be that amount. So once again, the total request remains the same.
Well, I'm fine with the way you have it. If you want to put the cleaning costs within the maintenance line or break them out, it doesn't really much matter to me either way. I just think there's a conversation we all need to better understand about how our curious three-way partnership with the Arms Library works, and that it sort of cuts across traditional landlord-tenant concepts of how to run a building, because we have a three-way partnership and not a two-way partnership. And so it makes it sometimes complicated and confusing to understand which items belong to the town as owner of the building and which items belong to the three-way partnership as user of the building.
Right. Well, yeah, that certainly is part of a larger conversation regarding the lease, I think. I mean, the topics you just mentioned would come up if we were to discuss again our proposal to amend the lease.
And the main reason I just brought the maintenance line item up is that to me is clearly one of wear and tear on the building that is brought about by the users of it, namely the patrons who tramp in and out, and require the building to be cleaned.
So for now, can we think about leaving your line items as is and just add the word "and cleaning" after the word maintenance under operating cost for this going forward?
Sure.
Make life simple.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Tricia, in addition.
Yeah, you mentioned something about the formula not working. So what formula did you use? Because it's not 50-50 between Shelburne and Buckland. And I'd like to know at least what formula you used and how you came up with this division.
Well, the current numbers are just based upon last year's numbers. In other words, the current numbers, for 2026, our request is just 2.5% of what we requested in fiscal year 2025.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole formula. There was no formula made trying to determine, well, what percentage is Buckland paying out of this total from the two towns, and what percentage is Shelburne paying out of the total of these two towns. That sort of formula had been used, I think, for the last 2 years, but Buckland did not follow the formula last year, and We are, well, there is no understanding regarding a formula that both towns have certified as appropriate. If I can
And
put it
that's one of the things that
there's no
we are
there's no
continually.
formal agreement. Sorry, go ahead, Lori.
I'm sorry, Dan. No, that's just one of yet another of the things that we're continuing to try to figure out to make all of this as fair for everyone as we can. It's a perennial issue, and like almost each generation of us tries to tackle it. We have been working.
Yeah. So you said something awfully curious, Dan, which was Buckland chose not to follow it. So what does that mean exactly? That Buckland said, yeah, you're asking us for $27,000, but we're only going to give you 20? What do you mean?
It wasn't that extreme, but you're right. In other words, I can't remember the exact percentage. I remember what they gave us over in 2025, what they gave us over 2024 was a 1.8% increase. And I know that we had asked more than that. Now, we're not talking big, huge dollars here. I mean, it's like a few $100 difference in these percentage points, you know.
Right, which makes me wonder why Buckland didn't just say, okay, it's only a few $100, we'll pay what they're asking for. Because then what happens if the things, I mean, I'm new here, so you guys maybe have gone through this before, but then what happens if you can't meet the accounting? Does Shelburne foot the rest of the bill?
No, the Arms Library Association is very lucky to have an endowment. And we draw down that endowment when we don't have the funds from current donations or state aid or the towns or whatever. And we have been doing that the last few years, a couple years, in terms of the real value of the endowment, you know, increasing its value, well, assuming inflation, the real value of the endowment has gone down slightly over the last couple of years in order to make up shortfalls. Like you mentioned, if Buckland doesn't come through like we requested, that's how we make it up.
And
Tricia, can I interrupt for a minute?
Sure.
I'm currently the chair of the board and soon to give that position up, but we met with Buckland last week, and they are very interested in having an understanding in writing. I don't know if you've met. I came on late. I guess I thought this was going to start at 6:45, and you guys got started sooner. But they would like to have an understanding in writing, and I think it's incumbent upon the two towns, the select boards, the finance committee, to kind of negotiate that and put it in writing, and then we don't have to explain this every year, and everybody's working from the same page. So as long as they're interested in getting together, if you guys are interested, that would be great, and we could just get beyond this. As Laurie said, it's a perennial problem, and when you have new people coming into select board and finance positions, they all ask the same question. It's a good question, but we explain it every year, and it doesn't need to be there.
The customary way that this has gone from budget year to budget year is, as you see in front of you, is a 60-40 split. And I guess that what I would bring down to a conversation with Buckland, which I'm happy to sit down and have as our liaison to the Pratt Building Committee, is let's go back and look at what is in writing in our, founding documents and take it from there.
Well,
I don't know what's in those documents. I think that the thing that most recently, when we went through this, I think 2 years ago, we did a survey, we did a study. that really came down to just about that 60-40 split in terms of the usage from Shelburne and the usage from Buckland. And so I think that's when everybody agreed that, yeah, the 60-40 split makes sense. I don't know why Buckland, didn't pony up those extra $100 last year. Maybe there was a nose out of joint or something. But I think they're willing this year. They seem very interested in getting something in writing and just making this issue go away every year.
Well, I would agree with that. I'm actually kind of surprised there isn't something in writing. This has sort of been kind of a, yeah, okay, we'll do whatever. That doesn't seem very prudent, I guess.
Tricia, if you and Joan Livingston could get your heads together and deal with it, she's the one that wants to do this. She wants it in writing. So, if you two took the impetus to go ahead and put this together and show it to both boards, that'd be great.
Okay, that's
John,
a question for
Yeah.
another.
John,
Lori?
I'm sorry. Could I, we've actually, after the meeting with Buckland, I was given actually some homework, and some of those things are to start figuring out finding out about working with a memorandum of understanding and working with Mass State Libraries to see what other places have done and if they've dealt with this kind of situation, which is pretty unique. So we would be working on that as well.
Great. Finance Committee have
Oh,
questions?
sorry. I had one question about the staffing, just to understand. Would it be beneficial to do something different with the pages and the aides, like combining them to make a new assistant and expanding the hours? Or is this something that these are critical roles as they are?
That's an interesting question, Tricia. The page position is one that is specifically for like a high school student or a young person. There's a grant that we're given every year, and we hire a high school student to give them their first job. And we'd never even thought about trying to, to combine them or anything. And I think that would take a little thinking about.
Okay.
Well,
I
giving an
definitely don't
answer.
want to take a job from a high school student. So
Well, no,
that's great.
it's a fabulous program from the Gavin family.
I'm just gonna throw this away.
I'm sorry?
I think that was just somebody's background.
Let's
Okay.
everybody try and stay in order and ask for permission to speak, since everybody's talking over everybody, okay? Let's hear from the
Sorry.
committee. Comments or thoughts from the Finance Committee on this?
Okay, Rick, I've got a couple comments here. I've been around the block on this issue once before, I think, here. But I'll start with one question first. One line items here is insurance. What is Arms Library insuring?
Arms Library is insuring everything except for fire insurance or the building itself. The town still pays for that. But business liability insurance, the contents of the library insurance, let's see, liability, I guess that's part of business liability insurance, which covers the officers as well as employees. And that,
You've answered my question, primary question, Dan. I wanted to make sure that we didn't have both parties insuring the building. The town insures the building, the library insures the contents and the liability, etc. Is that correct?
correct.
Okay, so there we have another town of Shelburne expense for the library is the insurance on the building.
Correct.
Okay, and as far as your cleaning, yes, just included in maintenance, and everybody will be happy.
Okay.
Regarding the formula, thank you, Tricia. I was going to ask exactly the same question. What happened to the formula? Try to determine Shelburne users versus Buckland users. It's a battle. It takes a long time and nobody believes the numbers. The school districts can't get it right as to what towns the students live in. By my opinion on it, best way by far is the populations of the two towns are approximately equal. Library services are available to every resident of each town, in addition to being available to every resident in the state. A 50-50 split makes sense as far as the town appropriations. And I think there's history associated with that. The Arms Library was founded in the 1800s. The town first appropriated funds for it in 1894. 1894, the towns of Buckland and Shelburne each appropriated $100, 50-50. In the mid-1950s, that had gone up to about $1,100 each, but still 50-50. In the 1980s, the budget requests came to the two towns, and like you just heard described a few minutes ago, Buckland decided to give less. Ever since then, Buckland has given less. Then this formula came into play, basically justifying why Buckland should give less. There's lots of history back there where it was done 50-50 for years, for probably 80, 90 years. The split was 50-50 between the two towns until one town decided to play a little bit less. And then we did this, we just increased 3% of what we had the previous year so that one town could produce to play less. That's just a little bit of history on the funding of the Arms Library. And then the other point is that it's not a town of Shelburne library. Arms Library Association is a 501c3 nonprofit. The library employees are not town employees. The Board of Trustees of the Arms Library can run their library however they choose and request donations from the two towns in whatever amount they wish. If they want to give their director a raise of 10%, it's well within their purview to do it. She's not a town employee. When we allocate between the two towns, I immediately ask the question, how many Charlemont residents use the library? How many Coleraine residents use the library? How many Asheville residents use the library? Are we allocating costs to those towns also? Does it make sense to this is where maybe that memo of understanding needs to take these things into account and lay out groundwork for it. There's a lot of opinion on the Buckland side, I believe, that it's a town of Shelburne library and we're paying to use their library. That is not the case. It is a 501c3 nonprofit. Happens to reside in a town of Shelburne building. That's my opinion.
Interesting information.
Thank you.
Todd, any comments or thoughts?
Well, the last thing I had, it's a little bit of a different topic. The elevator. You guys had talked about trying to get some grants or some other funding to help with that replacement. Has there been any traction with that? You had any luck?
Yes, we did apply for CPA funds, and we expect an answer from the CPC, the committee, sometime in March. We requested $45,000 from them. And then, so the $45,000 we're requesting from them, if that comes through, the town of Shelburne last year, the voters voted $55,000 in capital funds for the elevator. So we'll have $100,000, and then we think that we can come up with the remainder of what's required to replace the elevator. So it's really dependent on whether the CPC funds come through.
Okay, thank you. That's it, Rick.
Okay. Anyone else? Any other thoughts, Andrew or Tricia, that you'd like to bring up?
I guess just regarding that MOU, do we pursue this before town meeting? I don't know that this could work out. What is the thought on that.
Rick, could I speak to that?
Oh, Lori, yes, please.
Thank you. Did I do that the right way? So we actually, I don't think it's something that can be pulled off before annual town meeting, but it's something that is already, I'm starting to make the contacts and we're putting it in motion. So I don't think we need to try to make that a deadline.
Okay. I guess I'd be happy if there was a commitment to get said document in place, though, before we go through this next year. Because
Yes.
this doesn't seem to be, if it's we're having the same questions, it's my turn to ask the same questions because it's my first year, and John Corman said, everybody asks that. The finance committee wants to know the same things. So I think that we should not have to have those questions again next year. Perennial questions are never a good thing.
They're not, but they're perennial. But I think
Well,
it's really
but they
good
don't need to be.
Well,
They
no,
don't need
and that's
to be.
why we are making movement forward on those.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, I thank you all for your information and the input. Very well done, and we will continue on with our business at hand. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you all for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Look at that. We're only 2 minutes late for you, Jeff.
Woo!
Woo. Highway Department time discussion. Jeff Johnston, our highway superintendent, is with us this evening.
Rick?
Yes, Andrew.
Just to jump in and let you update you, Jeff, is that I didn't get a chance to speak with you today. So if there's any pressing news that you want to share with Tricia and Rick and me, just by way of update, feel free. Otherwise, launch into your topic.
All right. Briefly, it was busy couple of weeks with storms. We got, they're forecasting 5 more storms in the coming next couple of weeks. We didn't even know where I was going to go with that.
If there's nothing pressing as far as updates, you can.
I don't think so. Yeah, no. I mean, that's about it.
The subject at hand then. We've all received the overview benefits, overtime versus benefit package that you've provided. We have additional information about the history of when this was last looked at and the decisions that were made, input from town council. We have a lot of information, background on where we got or how we got to where we are at the moment. But why don't you go ahead and give us an overview of what your request is?
Sure. I mean, I'll jump right into the kind of the third section of that overview thing that I just wrote up and Terry sent out. So the town offers a benefit package, sick, vacation, personal time, which there's nothing bad about the package itself. I wasn't aware that at the time of hire, the way that the benefit and overtime work together, or in this case, sometimes against each other. The way that the system is set up, that we currently, in the policy, it states that sick, personal, vacation time aren't considered as time worked. And when accounting for overtime, you get penalized for using such time. I just feel that it's a large deterrent for employees when they put themselves out there, when the town is in need, for many, many hours. and I'm using the highway department as an example for this. Like in late spring, your summer months, and early fall, give or take 6 months of time, them are your busiest months of the year. Them months, you really want everyone there working, not using their time, because that's the time of year where your construction and all that gets done, and actually gets your roadways and your landscape set for your winter months, and your rain. Winter, on the other hand, is actually the slowest of all the seasons. And as you heard through the grapevine, we've had sickness going through ours. It's sickness going through homes. You get worn down, body and mind, especially when you put in the extensive hours when a snow event happens. So far we've had 4 events where we've just haven't gone home. We just stayed at the shop, worked all night until everything was done the next day, whether it was 12 hours, 8 o'clock at night to 8 o'clock in the morning. We were out there doing it. It wears you down. I've had an employee had to cancel a doctor's appointment because of the fact that he was going to lose his overtime that he worked a couple of days prior. We had an instance where an employee had to take care of some personal issues, which we resolved after the fact. But he it was in and out in the beginning, so he lost some time because of that. So when I said that wintertime is the slowest of the seasons, to start off the season, we really had beautiful weather. But it was so cold, there was nothing we could do except for maybe cut some trees or do stuff like that. Brush cutting. So in my eyes, it's a perfect time to take a day or two, so that way, because we were struggling, we're scraping to find stuff to do to stay busy, to make it worth the while to be there. It was a struggle. Now that's changed because of the storms. But in my eyes, I believe they should be. But the way the weather is predicted now is actually just horrible. I mean, with $1 million worth of equipment they have, they don't even come close anymore. So 3-4 days down the road, if a rain event happens and I had to call them in for freezing rain, I mean, that wasn't predicted. I mean, I think that's an instance where they shouldn't be penalized for using time, and they should get them call-in hours as overtime. One, it wasn't their scheduled shift. It was after the fact. Change any call-in events. I mean, it's any call-in events, such as just to sand a slippery spot or whatever. They should be paid overtime in my eyes. Now, I'm not legal. I don't have a degree in anything. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just going by what I found, and what I found was the current law states employers, either private or public, do not have to count sick, vacation, or personal time as time worked. However, the law doesn't restrict both private and public employers to allow for such time to be counted as time worked. I believe there's instances where this should be considered, and even furthermore considered as part of the benefit package. We, as the department head, should be able to maintain discipline in the employee's usage and how often it is used in an event where overtime comes into play. I also found that current law states that private and public must pay employees overtime after 40. Now that law was put into place because there was corporations and companies that weren't paying their employees any overtime for any hours worked. So that law was put into place to protect the employee and get them paid what they were. But this is another instance where the law isn't restricted. It doesn't restrict the town or employer to make it better, whether it's to pay overtime after 8, overtime after 40, overtime after scheduled shift. I've worked in different environments. I've worked in the after 40. I've worked at the scheduled shift, and I've worked after 8. And the employees' morale was much better after 8 hours because they felt like, where's my wording? Excuse me. Anyways,
You said
they
that they
felt
were
wanted.
valued.
Yes, that's it. And I don't know if people have been paying attention, but and I'm not saying it's going to happen at Shelburne. I think we have a very great crew. They really work hard. They do their jobs well. But our surrounding towns are losing employees at a fast rate. One being they're leaving for other reasons, money, but they're not replacing anyone because it's hard to find help. The labor pool just isn't there. And I think the town of Shelburne, if this might be a step in the right direction to change such policy, because one, we need to think about retaining who we have. We also need to create something for recruitment purposes to draw in them skilled individuals that really can represent the town at a professional level. But I wanted to bring it to your attention to at least start a discussion about it.
Well, thank you for that. Do I have this correct? That you are looking for more discretion as the department head to decide under what circumstances you can preserve an employee's overtime when there's a day in that 7-day period that technically would lose that for them. Is that
Yes. I mean, that's a good starting point. I mean, we can build off of it at a later date or a later year or down the road, but I think we need to start somewhere.
Great, Andrew, any comments? Andrew, your liaison, you should go.
Sure, I'll jump in. I've had some of this conversation already with Jeff, so that won't be new to him. But I guess I would say the part of the case for either discretion or moving back to the 8-hour overtime versus the 40-hour overtime is that I'm sympathetic with is giving a supervisor discretion to make judgments about particularly sick time and family emergencies and things like that. I think those are clear instances where events beyond somebody's control are dictating how they need to take time out, and that should not be held against them if they get called back in for a snowstorm, in my view. So I'm in favor of a department head having that kind of discretion to approve somebody's sick time or emergency leave request within a 40-hour concept. The part I'm not yet persuaded on, Jeff, is the vacation and personal time piece. That I feel like there's certainly a case to be made there that winter is a slower time. But I feel like, and I'll give you an example from my own workplace. I work for Holyoke Community College, which shuts down every Christmas week. And so that, in effect, is a forced vacation for me, where I don't get to choose when to take time off. I take that time off, whether that's my favorite vacation time of the year or not. You may have employees who like to go hunting in the fall, or are, avid whitewater people in the summertime, or who knows what. But I don't feel like it would be the town's place to tell an employee when they should take their vacation. That should be scheduled in consultation with the highway superintendent so that you have the coverage you need, and to allow people to take time off, whether it's spring or summer or fall, um, and still keep work projects going. So I know that's difficult, but that is the prerogative of an employee to take that time when they want to be with their family or go on an adventure or whatever it might be. And if their favorite time of year to take vacation is wintertime, they probably like that enough that they'd be willing to forego the overtime opportunity should it arise on that vacation week. But I think that the bottom line is that the superintendent needs to manage the overtime in the interest of the town, and not have the employees managing the overtime in their own, interest. That's really what it comes down to, in my view.
Tricia.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for all your thoughtful presentation. I know that this took a lot on your part to come up with this idea and to really try to help your employees. And I appreciate that a lot. Also that maybe you were out sick today and you're here. So I had several questions, and some of them have to do with the previous policies and stuff, because I had some questions with all of from the previous select board meetings regarding this issue. But first of all, I guess my question for you specifically, Jeff, is I don't see it the way Andrew sees it, that you're forcing people to take vacation when they want to. If they're asking you to go on vacation, it's up to you to, as the role as a department head, to approve it or say, no, I'm sorry, you can't have it then because we've got this big bridge project coming up. I also have a feeling that people wouldn't be intentionally trying to skirt their duties. And, so like, oh God, the bridge is going in, then I'm going to take that week off, like, I don't feel that your folks would do that. So, and I've seen them work in all kinds of things. The thing that came to me that was a big red flag was this was not something that was real clear in, how did you say it, that it was?
Well, it was,
go ahead.
During the interview, it was known that overtime was calculated after 40. I didn't know until like this, I don't know, when Mark came back from his vacation, so the second week I started, he mentioned it. So I wasn't aware of it at the time. But I mean, either way, it doesn't affect me because I'm not an hourly employee. I don't get that overtime, benefit or whatever. But still, I mean,
right.
Coming from that type of work, I never had a situation, and well, not 9 years in Heath, I didn't have that. There was a time in the factory where it was, but then the policy was changed, just because of how things were happening. There was disgruntled people, but I mean, I've heard that the policy's changed over the years multiple times in different directions. All I have in front of me is what I wrote up. So I know Rick mentioned he's, had some history. I don't know what that history really is. But I think this is a strong point. One in my end remarks is retainment and recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
Anything we can do to get that employee who, meets or exceeds what we have now is only going to benefit the town. And it's going to benefit the department also.
I'm glad you brought up the history because I was looking at all of those select board meeting minutes, and in April 26th, 2021, it said that the revised overtime policy would be evaluated over the next 2 years. So did that happen? I'm
Terry?
asking for people who are here because I don't.
I
We
don't
certainly had
believe-
conversations about the overtime policy over the last 2 years. In terms of what kind of evaluation did you have in mind, Tricia?
I didn't have anything in mind. It was it was in the overtime, it was in the meeting minutes. So hold on one second and I'll pull it up from April 26, 2021.
I read that as well, Tricia, and it did say that, but I think what Andrew's saying is there was no formal reevaluation of it. Perhaps in a select board meeting, but the conversation individually has certainly happened. Certainly within my almost 2 years on the board as well.
Okay. Okay, so there wasn't anything formal about it, so that was just something that was said. And then I'm curious about what the actual numbers are here, because one of the issues that I'm guessing was some folks thought that maybe the employees were abusing the system, and then I never, there weren't any numbers actually shared in the meeting minutes, but Bob Manners had said the 2019 system, which I think was the 8-hour overtime instead of the 40-hour overtime rule, had been managed well and didn't significantly impact the budget. But there were no numbers shared, so I don't actually know what it was. It a budgetary concern that started this? Was it just the FLSA issue that started this? What was the problem that started this conversation to begin with? Someone was concerned about how it was being handled, or?
Originally, it was flagged in an audit, stating that we weren't following the Fair Labor Standard Act. And then Andrew noticed a trend, I believe it was Andrew, in timesheets and how overtime was being paid, and asked that the policy be revisited.
Okay, and so so the policy was revisited, and I think that's when the changes were made. Okay, and then it was going to be looked at again, so within 2 years, but I guess it didn't because that was 2021. It wasn't anything official. So I guess today is when we're making the official review.
The start thereof, perhaps.
Okay. So I guess my question would be, what would based on historical data, which we have some of, and I would caution that using any data from winters in the past, or storm systems that we've had in the past, these are all going to be changing as we move closer to 2050 because of climate change. So I would expect that whatever scenarios we know that required extra work from the highway department, it's going to get worse going forward, that there are probably going to be more issues needing overtime, more downed trees, more floods, more bridges breaking, more culverts not working, and that we might actually experience more opportunities, shall we say, to grant overtime to the employees. So what kind of fiscal impact can we expect from doing it this way?
Wow. I don't know how that question could get answered without some serious digging and calculations, but anyone?
Well, I think part of the really, Rick, I saw in some of the documents from the previous select board meetings, the questions were about how much this was impacting the budget.
But
So I think, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Numbers, right?
There were no numbers there. It was just people were saying, yes, there is, no, there isn't. But so what I would like to see is, what were actually the costs that we're talking about. And also, I would say that So that's one thing. Another thing is that really it's Jeff's responsibility to make sure that people aren't abusing the policy. We hired him to be a good manager, to be a good superintendent for the highway department. I don't think he's going to be like, hey, if you do this, you're going to be able to get extra overtime. I think he's an honest fellow, and that's why we hired him. And he's going to make sure that his employees do what they're supposed to do. And if we find out that he's not doing that, then that's our problem to deal with him. So I think we have to trust in some ways that we hired him to be a good boss, and that he should do what he needs to do to make sure his employees are well taken care of. Because I agree, anybody who's tried to make a doctor's appointment or get through the grocery store line knows that there's not enough people working anymore. And to get somebody who knows how to do all the things that those guys in the highway department know how to do, I think we're doing them a disservice by not supporting their needs as people and trusting that Jeff is going to do the job that he was hired to do. Now, I think personally, the highway department should be classified as first responders, and whatever rules first responders have, that's what we should follow. So I think what Jeff had mentioned about, somebody taking off the weather was going to be great. It was predicted that it was going to be fine. It was snowing this morning. I'm looking at the weather app on my phone. No snow predicted at all. So I was like, okay, that's not working. So I believe what he says about the weather not working. And he's trying to plan, and he says, okay, somebody wants to take Monday and Tuesday off. And then boom, there's a huge storm on Thursday, and they end up working all night to make sure our roads are clear so that our residents can get to and from work, the hospital, or wherever. The state police can get through where they need to get through to. Our police and fire are available. Ambulances can do what they need to do. It's a very critical role that they fill. So I think we need to actually reconsider some of this. I think the 8-hour overtime is the right way to go instead of 40 hours, because it's not some of the other arguments made about that. Like, I think it's clear that it's not working as would work in the best interests of our employees of the highway department and our town and our residents.
Well said, Tricia. I don't disagree a whole lot with what you had to say. It is often a matter of fate, where in a slow time in the winter, an employee says, hey, we're just twiddling our thumbs. I'm going to take a personal day tomorrow. And then 2 days later, he's working 12, 14 straight hours and not getting compensated for it. It's a big ask of what we ask of the highway department. Terry, you have a comment.
I just want to make sure that you understand this is policy specific, so it encompasses the police department too.
Yep, everyone.
Yes.
Yep.
So can we have a separate personnel policy for the highway department, because they
No.
are first responders?
No,
What
the
about
policies are meant for all town employees, and I think town council would have an issue with segregating the policies for one department and not another.
Well, I think in other, she might, but I think, in other businesses, people have different pay schedules, different types of leave policies. It's not always the same for everybody in a company. So I don't see why we couldn't do something different. I'm glad you brought up the police, because if the police are out and working, they have a set schedule in advance. They're supposed to be working 40 hours a week. But if there's an accident right at the end of somebody's shift, they have to stay there until the accident is cleared. So let's say they get off work at 3:30, accident happens at 2:30, they're there, they stay till it's cleared. Maybe it's not cleared until 5:30. They're getting overtime for that because they're still going to work the rest of their shift because they have to, the rest of their regularly scheduled 40 hours. It seems to me the highway department fits in kind of a similar situation, being first responders as they are, that they could end up working all these extra hours, but then not get paid for them because we say, well, unless it goes over 40, I mean, Jeff could also be abusive and say, hey, you work 3 extra hours, you take 3 extra hours off tomorrow or the next day or whatever. And it could completely backfire because there might be another storm.
Is that the case, Terry, that if an officer works over past his shift time, and then the next day he had already scheduled a personal day, that he does not get that overtime? Because that's
it's handled the same way as highway is handled in payroll. They follow the same policy.
Well, we didn't expect to resolve this or make any decisions tonight. Wanted to, or what Jeff was requesting is start the conversation. I think he's heard some good feedback, but I know he's not feeling up to snuff this evening, and I think he's done a heck of a job. We do have the finance committee who's been listening. If you folks would like to chime in, I'd like to give you a couple of minutes to do so if you have any thoughts.
I think I know the big lift is going to be coming up with some financial numbers on what the impact would be. But so one thing, clarification for me is, so you're talking an 8-hour shift or 40, but you're also, the big piece here is counting days off as days worked, correct? Is that kind of the crux of it? Which keeps the forward, like that's what keeps this moving? Is that what we're talking about? Is that the big issue?
I think so. Right,
Yeah.
Jeff?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know how, I don't know if we have enough. It's good we're getting a conversation started, but I like the thought that we should be helping them out as much as we can. And I'd hate to take a day off and then be stuck a whole weekend working and not get the overtime. But it's good to get this conversation going. Jim?
I'm glad that this issue is in the ball court of the selectmen. I can remember discussions about exactly the same issues back in the 80s and 90s. It never goes away. So,
Well, we have to do something, right? I like your lobs. You've been doing a great job with the lobbing today, Jim.
personnel management is the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen.
Great. Well, Jeff, you have
I just quickly on another note, when you get hired, you get presented the benefit package, and I'm going to use vacation time. You get your vacation allotment. But really after that first year, in order to get that vacation time allotment again, it's calculated off the hours worked a year prior. So it's not like the days you're taking off, you've actually worked for those days, is why I'm asking for to be considered as time worked.
So they're counted on one hand here. They're counted one way for your vacation time, the other way you're not getting them.
interesting.
Well, I'm just like when you get your initial package, right? It's kind of presented to you. You really haven't earned it, but it was part of that package to kind of during your hire. If you get through that year and you use it, or I think in the policy, however much time you have left, I think at the end of the year, half of it will be taken back. But that next fiscal year, when you get your time again, because every July your package comes back again full. Them hours are actually the days you get in that package the year after are calculated on hours worked the year prior, so accrued hours. Then that's where I'm coming up with in my mind is that they should be considered days worked, because in order to get that, you need to accrue the time.
Okay.
It's just that my opinion. I might be way off, but it's just my opinion.
I'm not following how that connects with overtime. I guess that the earning of vacation is a pretty standard concept that every, every
But
2 weeks,
that's
every two weeks you earn 5 hours or whatever the
no,
formula
I
is,
understand. No, I
Um,
understand that. I understand that. But as the policy states now, it's the town doesn't consider it as time worked. And therefore whether it's vacation, sick, or personal, and that's how they're losing the overtime because it's not considered time worked. It's still paid out to you as a vacation day, but when it comes to overtime calculation, it's not considered time worked, and you lose that overtime pay based on the way the policy is written right now.
I think he's talking about under vacation 9A, it says new employees will earn vacation at a rate of 0.83 days per month worked. Is that right? Until he or she has successfully completed 2 full years of employment.
yeah, I think Jeff's making a different kind of argument, but I don't know.
We're going to solve it this evening. Jeff, I think you hung in there really well, considering how it's obviously you're not feeling your best this evening. Thank you for bringing this in front of us. I think we need to decide what we do going forward as far as addressing this issue further when we've all had more time to ponder it. Do we look at it at a future meeting? Do we think about an executive session? I don't know that we're going to gain any more ground this evening on the
We
issue.
won't. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think we'll make any more ground, but I think, can we elicit Finance Committee's help in identifying some of this, the fiscal impacts?
I think they made it clear what they thought.
No, we're more than willing to listen and help out where we can.
Okay, thank you.
Perhaps we need a meeting just for Finance Committee, Select Board, and Jeff at a future date. But for now, I think we've taken it as far as we can down the road, and we will we'll not let it sit here. We'll bring it up again and pursue the discussion a little further. Fair enough?
Is that good? Thanks for bringing it to our attention, Jeff.
No, thanks for the time.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. Have a
Yep.
good, get better.
Good
Well,
night.
trying.
It's no fun.
No.
No.
We are down to old business, Department of Veteran Services, the HERO Act. As you recall, at our previous meeting, we had Karen from the assessor's office present the information, a bunch of scenarios of everything from 10% to 100% in the various categories. We asked that the assessors weigh in on it with their recommendation. They are perhaps still meeting at the moment, or they've finished, but they were meeting this evening. So we will get meeting and we will pass over that for tonight. Memorial Hall renovations, the fundraising idea for seats. Andrew, what's your ask?
Oh, well, I think where I think that maybe Terry can correct me if I'm wrong, but where I think the email trail left us was that the legal department recommended that the Take a Seat campaign, if it goes forward, would be that the recommended $25 minimum contribution per seat be paid to the town of Shelburne, rather than to the Memorial Hall Association, and that they were fine with the Memorial Hall Association raising funding through the Name a Seat campaign idea of people engraving their name in a little brass plaque on the armrest. I guess, which is fine with me. I mean, the only question I have is that the Take a Seat requires, if we don't want to rip up the floor by having people just unbolt their own seats, it would require us to hire a carpenter to do that in a somewhat more orderly and less destructive fashion. And the Memorial Hall Association was willing to go forward and do that. But with this legal advice that the town of Shelburne be paid for the seats because they're surplus property, raises the question as to who should hire the carpenter.
Well, Andrew, it was that the payments should go to the town, but for use for Memorial Hall, period. So it would be a new account. You already have an account with significant funds in it. There would be an additional account, as my understanding, line item where these funds would go, and they would go back to you. What my read of both recommendations is that, yeah, Memorial Hall Association can go ahead and do that, but the payment of that money doesn't sit in the Memorial Association's accounts. It's given to the town. The town then puts it in a line item to be given back into the Memorial Hall for use in the Memorial Hall renovation project, period. That was my understanding.
Is that technically possible, Terry?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
That's how I understood it too, Rick.
So
That's fine. It's really it's kind of it's small potatoes, so we're not talking about a lot of money.
yeah, but I mean, when the lawyer quotes, all this would be governed by general laws, chapter 44, 53A, yada, yada, yada. Have to pay attention. So if that's the way we're advised to do it, that's the way I would recommend we proceed. And it doesn't stop either of the two wants, which is to continue. I think we voted to consider the existing chairs surplus to do with as the committee sees fit. And if you see fit to sell them in a fundraiser, that's fine. But that money needs to be accounted for, given to the town, to put in a line item for memorial.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I don't have a problem with that. Most of the chairs we're paying to take them to a landfill, so
That's the way it is. So we're good on that subject then?
Well, so the second item about the plaque business, that has to be cleared up too, to make sure that we're all on the same page on how that would happen. So I think, yeah, what the attorney had said was about you'll want to make clear nothing in the process affects ownership of the town's property. So with the chairs would still be property of the town, the new chairs?
right. It would be made very clear to people that they're not buying a seat. They're putting their name on a seat. They don't own the seat by putting their name on it.
Mm-hmm.
The seat still belongs to the town.
Right. That was my understanding as well from what was presented, and that in the same case, you guys do it, you collect the funds, you turn them over to the town, we put them in a line item for use in your project. That way there's total transparency and tracking how much money was raised and where it went. Seemed reasonable advice to me, and it didn't throw a cog in the wheel at all, or muck the waters as it would be. So did that answer your question, Tricia?
Well, I'm not sure on the naming of the seats that money needs to be transferred back to the town. Nobody's purchasing any town property in that case.
He says plaques on the new seats. I suggest that they be handled entirely by Memorial Hall Association.
Right.
And the proceeds from those sales and the plaques themselves be donated to the town for support of the theater project. That's pretty clear to me.
So it would go in the same gift account to be used for expenses relating to the renovation.
Okay.
That's the highlighted portion that was in that cover letter that was received. And I see Angel is on, and she was, well, I don't know if she was in part of this conversation or.
Was
No, it was the
Dara.
accountant.
Okay.
It's Dara, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
it was, yep, sorry.
Right. So if I can, so there's a separate gift account. This is the thing that I wasn't aware of. There's a separate gift account that the lawyer is referencing under this chapter 44, section 53A or 52A and a half.
My thought
So
was
that
new account.
the, sorry, Rick.
I understood it to be a new account that we would establish, the town would establish.
That's what I'm wondering about.
Correct,
Is
Terry?
there, so there is not an account yet?
No, we would establish it for this purpose.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would be mixed with other things and wouldn't have the transparency of what was raised and where it went.
Right. I guess it was just that I had heard the gift account. I thought it already existed. So that's why I wanted to check. So we would have to establish a gift account for this particular purpose only and then close it once it was done. Is that right?
Yes, which could be 2,
Okay.
3 years because the project's going,
Right.
over a period of years.
Yep. That's fine. I just wanted to make sure that we dotted all the I's and crossed
Well, I
all
spoke
the
to the Academy of Music, which is in a similar situation as we are. They are a nonprofit organization which leases the building, the theater from the city of Northampton. And their director told me that she has done a number of different naming of seats over the years. So it's a kind of an ongoing process in their case. And I didn't get into the details of whose account that money goes into. The only place where it really makes a difference is in fixed versus movable furniture in the hall. So in other words, when I started the movie project, I raised private money to purchase the screen, the projectors, the sound equipment. That's movable furniture. So if the town decided that they didn't want to have a movie theater going on up there, Pothole Pictures could pick up that stuff and take it to some other building and set it up. But seats and things that are nailed to the floors or the walls, those are the property of the town of Shelburne. So there's a difference between capital assets or fixed assets and movable furniture, which are also capital assets, but the movable furniture can belong to the tenant in the same way that the Arms Library Association owns the books, but not the bookshelves, So that's the distinction that's being made here. In this case, I'm not sure that it's going to matter a whole deal because there are plenty of needs in that building for fixed assets to be improved. The stage, the backstage, the green room, all that stuff. They're big price tag things that we don't have money for yet. And the naming of seats will make a dent in that, but will probably not go all the way. And the other funding that Memorial Hall Association is raising outside of the naming of seats, that can go toward the movable furniture. So, there's plenty of ways to slice this if you all feel that funding for the names on the brass plaques needs to go into the town's account rather than the association's account. I mean, the capital campaign is going to spend money on both of those things, both the fixed property and the movable property. But there is a distinction between who owns that stuff in the end.
So if you do sell a whole bunch of seats, or naming of the seats rather, and that account is set up, when the Memorial Hall Association comes to ask for it, you need to make sure it goes to something specifically that's town-owned according to this document. Easy peasy. I think we're all on the same page.
Yes.
I just have one question. If the seats are movable, if you got, instead of ones that screw down into the ground, but movable ones that could be used, like, I don't know, like if you wanted to have a wedding or a dance or something in that theater, you could move all those things to the side or only set up certain number of seats. And then, so it could be used for multiple things. Then those seats, if Memorial Hall Association owned them, then if they wanted to go someplace else and do their thing, they could go to a different location.
Yeah, you're getting into, well, we've already had that debate and have not gone that way. So the seats we're purchasing are going to be bolted into the floor, with the exception of, I think, 1 or 2 rows in the front that will be movable, sort of for the purposes you're describing, but probably more in the event there was an orchestra, that needed more space for a musical theater production or something. You could take out those first couple of rows of seats if you wanted to. But no, I think we're kind of splitting hairs at this point. The seats belong to the town.
Anything else you need from what's the next subject, Andrew?
No.
Thank you very much. New business, we have none.
Andrew, I have a quick question on the seats. I'm sorry, Rick. You had a lengthy email from Highland Seating, and you were looking for the board to
thank
vote
you.
on the specs.
Yes, I'm sorry. That goes right to Trisha's point about what kind of seats we're purchasing, that I forgot that we have a whole order that what is the name of the product? What is it called? Terry, I don't have it in front of me.
Well, first of all, you're wanting a vote or approval of the stain, and the stain is India teak on maple. And then you're choosing a fabric, the name Shire Red Rose.
Right, those were the final, when the committee reviewed those questions and we looked at different samples, the unanimous vote of the capital campaign committee was to go with the seat stain color and fabric color that's exhibited on the demo seat that they sent us. So we liked that, and we decided, let's just go with that. So that's the recommendation of the committee. It is, rather than choose one of the other colors.
So you need our approval for those?
I don't know
Is that what you're saying?
if we do or not, but sure, since this is their town seats, you should vote on the final specs on the seats as they're going into production.
I did read that. I did view the color of the fabric and the color of the stain, and I can support that 100%.
Yeah, I'm
Great.
fine with that too.
All right. Well, I guess if we're making motions, I'll move that we approve the stain and fabric colors as represented on the demo seat, with, as Terry has specified, with the India teak and the Shire red.
Do we have a second?
Yes, I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, matter to a vote. Andrew? And Tricia?
Aye.
I am aye. Motion passes 3-0. Good catch, Terry. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
New business. We had none at the time of the preparation of the agenda.
Oh, actually, there is one other motion there that Terry was referencing, which is that the Highland Seating is asking us for a motion to approve the what is it called? The total product specification. It's basically, you have the attachment they sent there, Terry.
That the one from Irwin?
Yeah, well, Irwin is the parent company that actually manufactures the seats, and Highland Seating is their Massachusetts kind of affiliate that will remove our seats and then install the new ones.
Is this what it is, Andrew? It's like a printout, 5 pages of the specs line by line.
Yes, that's what's gonna send them into production. So once we approve that, then it starts moving down the train to the production schedule, which currently is scheduled to have them delivered on May 27th, I think.
They were looking for that by
The 12th, I think.
Or
They
they-
needed the fabric by the 12th.
So
I
it
can't-
would be a vote to approve the product data submittal for approval.
Thank you. Yes, I will move that.
I'll second.
It's seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, put the matter to a vote. Andrew?
Okay.
Tricia?
Aye.
I am I. Motion passes 3-0. Now I'll ask, did any other come in I'm aware of? Hearing none, any other business? Our next regularly scheduled meeting is February 24th. We did have a communication from the emergency management director over the weekend regarding an SOI statement of interest or something to that effect. And independently, we each gave the nod to him, and just to bring you up to date, he did submit that himself this afternoon.
Great.
It wasn't really a contract, it was a statement of interest. So, just bring you up to time on that. Under any other business, one more came from the emergency management director. He talks about how far the progress is coming with his emergency management or Office of Emergency Management crew has progressed, and he would like to invite the town admin, the select board members, police chief, fire department chiefs, the highway superintendent, and others as seen fit, participate in an emergency operations center training event. He said he feels it's time to take this training to the next level, and that being including the outside force that they would be working with and supporting during any event in order to make the town's emergency reaction team completely, fully competent. He felt the training is needed. After discussion, the date and the time for that is not set and will be coming back to us. But I told him I would at least run it by you so you were aware that it was coming down the line as an invitation to that training.
Rick, so you talked to Tom about it, and so it's not going to be on March 3rd anymore?
Well, I don't know that for sure, but we know that the 3rd is not for sure. So it's a moving,
Okay.
could change.
Okay.
Change to another time, another day and another time. His
Okay.
original thought is being reconsidered. So
Okay.
we'll wait to hear back from him on how that plays out.
Was it because it's budget time or it was during the evening? What?
There was conversation of all those things
Okay.
between budget and warrant and timing, and it may be best after that, sometime in May, perhaps. Might make more sense. And the concern about a 2-hour block in the evening after everybody's worked a full workday, that maybe that's something better worked into an afternoon. But so he's revisiting all those thoughts and will get back to us.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything under any other business? Hearing none, we did get one piece of correspondence. Julie Petty from Conway regarding native plantings on Bridge Street, a proposal. This proposal was to enhance the tree plantings that have been done. I think they just got finished up last year, late in the fall, if maybe it was 2 falls ago, I lose track. In any event, it was to enhance, in the presenter's opinion, the streetscape by adding plantings under the trees. I think it got initiated by the flowers, with the Bridge of Flowers closed. There was a group that put out vases with flowers around town, up and down the streets, to kind of just make for a happy feeling. You may recall, perhaps not Tricia, but certainly Andrew, you'll recall the conversation with our tree warden, who went through all kinds of nightmares in getting the trees in properly. They had to be removed. They had to be put into specs for the growth of the tree. It involved what's under the tree, what's around the tree, what's on top of the tree, including a permeable surface. The thought of disturbing that, I'll do it, is disturbing to me. So I think from my point, I would acknowledge the letter, but I would have definitely not be interested in allowing this to be pursued, to dig up a very expensive and a very scientifically specific layer of planting materials that were put in. Any thoughts or comments from either of my fellow members?
Well, it's good to hear the history on that, because it looked like a great idea. But now that I hear all of this, I think I'm leaning towards your opinion that I don't want to mess with what's there right now, because it sounds like, I do remember trees getting changed, but I didn't know all of that other history. So that's really important to understand.
Glad I can remember some things correctly.
Terry, do we have, as part of the streetscape project, did that include the permeable mats or whatever it was that was going to go on top?
Town meeting allocated just over $6,000 this past year for phase 1 tree wells. And Jeff is researching companies that actually come in and lay it down, similarly to what Greenfield has done in their tree wells. It's also good from a handicapped accessible point of view, because it creates a level surface.
I think that was the other concern, was that we had sort of a potential tripping hazard by having loose dirt next to the concrete and stuff, especially where the sidewalks get very narrow. And so I'm in agreement with you, Rick. I think we should go forward with the permeable matting and see how that goes.
And we should, do we need to respond to this saying that we thank them for the thought, but it's not anything we want to pursue?
Yes, I will respond.
Thanks, Terry.
Anything else this evening? No other correspondence, public comment. We do have, it's getting out there, but we'll give a couple minutes to anyone who may have a public comment. And hearing none, we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So I will second that.
Moved to adjourn at 8:14. Thank you guys so much. All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you guys.
Aye.
Great.
We made it before 8:30. Yay, us.